It's time for appropriately gradual and staggered reopening of services.
Cardinal Timothy Dolan announcing a big step to reopen churches in the Archdiocese of New York. And there with him, the Bishop of Brooklyn, DiMarzio, making an announcement of his own. Plus this.
Behind me, white flags, each one representing a parishioner lost at St. Michael's Church because of the coronavirus. I'm Emily DROOBY, and coming up, I'll tell you how priests are dealing with the profound sense of loss.
Tough words tonight from the Vatican directed at Israel. It's about taking over land. Plus, the U.S. is bleeding millions more jobs. A well-known expert is here with ideas about fixing the economy. And in these hard times, working parents are facing challenges they never expected. Advice on how to cope is coming up. The news starts right now. This is what church is going to look like for the foreseeable future. A lot of social distancing. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. That's the view inside Manhattan's Our Savior Church, where New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan and Brooklyn's Bishop DiMarzio held a joint news conference this morning. The Cardinal revealing a big plan to restart public worship in the Archdiocese of New York. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story.
It's another sign New York is emerging from months of isolation. The Archdiocese of New York announcing plans to reopen its 288 churches once the green light is given by the state.
It's time for appropriately gradual and staggered reopening of services.
Cardinal Timothy Dolan speaking at Our Savior Parish in Midtown Manhattan about caring for parishioners physically and spiritually.
We've got the moral imperative, everybody, to protect the health of our people and the wider community. We have been doing that, we are doing that, and we will continue to do that. We also have a duty to care for the hearts and souls of our people.
Preparations for a gradual reopening called the Faith Forward Plan is a 5-phase approach that will start with churches opening for private prayer and confessions, followed by baptisms and marriage, Holy Communion outside of Mass, daily and funeral masses with limited attendees, and finally Sunday Mass with supervised attendance. People like Najwa Najem have been coming to Our Savior every day during the pandemic.
I've been coming here and saying prayers, then leave. I come here every day and do the same thing every day.
Though she's made her daily private prayer a priority, getting back to Mass and receiving the Eucharist is what she's missed most.
It will be Masses all over again. I missed it. There was no Masses, and hopefully we'll have that again.
The Archdiocese is hoping Masses will resume in full in around 6 weeks. And when they do, things will be different. Only the host will be offered during communion, and no physical contact will be allowed during the sign of peace. Bishop DiMarzio agreed that safety is paramount and that Brooklyn and Queens will follow the Archdiocese's lead.
We have to do both. We have to care for the souls and the bodies of our people. So we will move slowly but surely to get to maximum participation as quickly as we can.
One of the biggest changes to Mass, churches will be limited to only 25% capacity and will be disinfected regularly. Hand sanitizer will be available for parishioners, and everyone must sit 6 feet apart.
The desire of the people, including the priests, to get these churches open and for us to return to Mass and the sacraments. Everybody misses them very, very much.
Bishop DiMarzio says he'll be announcing a plan to gradually reopen churches in Brooklyn and Queens in the coming days. Christine?
Jess, priests will be coming in contact with parishioners more and more now, which I'm sure they're happy about. But what's the plan to keep them safe and healthy?
Yeah, priests are actually going to be tested weekly now for coronavirus moving forward. Parishes will be given cleaning supplies, and it will be up to each individual church to sanitize and disinfect, which should be a great reassurance for parishioners as well as the priests themselves.
All right, sounds like they've got it all covered. Thanks, Jess. During Currents News live coverage of Cardinal Dolan's news conference earlier today, I spoke with Dennis Paust. He's the communications director for the New York State Catholic Conference. I asked what his thoughts were on this long-awaited announcement.
I think a lot of Catholic New Yorkers are beginning to exhale a little bit. I mean, this is a long process, and but it was a good day yesterday when the governor made this announcement. It's very, very limited, but rightfully so at this time. But I congratulate Cardinal Dolan and Bishop DiMarzio for so quickly getting out there and reassuring the people that while this may take some time, we got a plan, and this is how we're going to proceed. When people aren't getting information, they tend to panic. And I know we've seen a lot in our social media of people saying, just open the churches, just open, we can do this. It's not that easy. And they made that pretty clear today.
Right. And there are going to be several phases in this. And they even said not every church is going to open at the same time. So the phases might be different depending on what parish you belong to, right?
Exactly. And what region of the state. Now, they were talking about the two dioceses in New York and Brooklyn. But, all over this great state, we are at very different places in terms of COVID-19. So, in the North Country or Central New York or even here in the Capital District, the numbers are so much lower that they will probably be able to proceed a little bit faster than in the Archdiocese or in the Brooklyn Diocese or the Rockville Center Diocese. But we're all limited to Governor Cuomo's 10 or under rule right now. But we're hoping within the next few weeks, that number is just going to keep going up, just like it did in reverse when he started lowering the thresholds of how many people could gather.
Right, and Cardinal Dolan mentioned that maybe Sunday Masses could begin again in about 6 weeks' time. How long do you think this whole process is going to take? When do you think these restrictions will be completely lifted? Do you see that ever happening? Are we always going to be wearing face masks to go to Mass?
Well, I think a lot is going to depend on what the people do. It's really in our hands. And the governor has said, and rightfully so, government can't keep you safe. Only you can keep you and your family safe. And so the more people do the right thing, wearing face masks, disinfecting, social distancing, the sooner we'll have this behind us. And God willing, there'll be a vaccine early next year. Mm-hmm. But we certainly think we can be getting back, at least in some parts of the state, to socially distanced Sunday Masses, within weeks. And are we going to see full St. Patrick's Cathedral again at Christmas? Probably not, unfortunately, but maybe the Christmas after that, or at least maybe even next Easter, we hope to see full churches.
Again, that was Dennis Paus, the Director of Communications for the New York State Catholic Conference. And stay with us. Right after this newscast, we'll replay in its entirety Cardinal Dolan's news conference with Bishop DiMarzio about reopening churches. That's coming up at 7:30 p.m. after Currents News. And we have breaking news about reopening churches in the Diocese of Brooklyn. The committee has given the go-ahead for churches to open starting May 26th. However, some are still not ready and may remain closed. Others will open for private prayer as well as for funerals, baptisms, and weddings. We'll have a complete wrap-up about these developments on tomorrow's Currents News. The number of confirmed coronavirus infections is higher than ever. More than 100,000 new cases were reported to the World Health Organization in the previous 24 hours. That's the most in a single day since the outbreak began. Even as that global number grows large, the rate of new deaths is falling. The Diocese of Brooklyn is at the epicenter of the pandemic. Residents of Brooklyn and Queens are suffering unimaginable pain and loss. So too are the priests who minister to them. Currents News' Emily DROOBY has the story from Queens.
White flags placed on the lawn outside of St. Michael's Church in Flushing, Queens, each one representing a member of their parish lost to the coronavirus. When done, there will be over 200. Many of those who've passed away are from nearby nursing homes. The pandemic making death a horrifying new normal for too many.
I am really overwhelmed by the pain.
The church's pastor, Monsignor John Vesey, tells us he has a big job facing him.
And I think by doing symbolic things like this, it's going to help all of us to be more mindful that we are one family.
The community of St. Michael's has experienced such a profound sense of loss. Many other churches in the Diocese of Brooklyn have been affected too. Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary Parish in Jamaica, Queens has candles next to the altar where they celebrate their live-streamed masses. 14, one for each parishioner, lost to the virus. The church's pastor, Father Manuel de Jesus Rodriguez, says it's a way to remember and honor those they've lost. They've also been using WhatsApp groups to reach and comfort their parishioners as they grieve the losses in their own family and in their church family. It's a difficult time for clergy, too. They've lost their friends, their parishioners, their people. Father Rodriguez says he's been leaning on faith to cope.
When Jesus is present in ourselves as the bond which unite us together and holds us together as brothers and sisters, everything becomes less painful.
From flags to candles to support groups to prayer, there's so many ways in which clergy are helping grieve those who they've lost and support those who need it. In Queens, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
The USS Theodore Roosevelt is back at sea tonight after recovering from a massive COVID-19 outbreak. The aircraft carrier sailed out of a Guam harbor this morning. At one point, more than 1,000 sailors had been infected by the disease. Brooklyn priest Father Mark Bristol is on board as the Catholic chaplain. He's working with the ship's commander to resume worship services. Here are some more headlines. Nearly 1 in 4 New Yorkers needs food, and Mayor Bill de Blasio is saying that by next week, the city will distribute 1.5 million meals a day. Catholic Charities Brooklyn Queens has already provided tens of thousands of free meals. State officials are blaming a fragmented national health system for major glitches in getting people tested for COVID-19. A shortage of supplies and a botched rollout by the CDC are being cited. Facebook will allow many of its employees to work from home permanently. The company is estimating that as many as half of its 45,000 person workforce could do their jobs from home. The Vatican rejoining the debate over peace in the Middle East. The Holy See is asking Israel to peacefully coexist with Palestine, saying it wants Israel to respect international law and proposes the two countries live side by side as two states. This after a phone call between a Vatican official and a Palestinian diplomat. The Vatican says it hopes the two countries will negotiate an agreement. There's a lot more news headed your way. More Americans filing for unemployment. The latest numbers from the Labor Department just ahead. Plus, the devastating impact of the massive floods in Michigan. Some federal help could be on the way. And how to get the economy going again. Elizabeth McDonald from Fox Business Network will join us. Don't go away.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
New numbers out today show that American jobs are still being destroyed by the pandemic. New jobless claims topped the 2 million mark last week. In just weeks, more than 38 million American jobs have vanished. That means about 1 in 4 people who were working before the outbreak aren't employed now. With the 50 states now reopened, at least partially, there's optimism about the future. There's also concern, especially for senior citizens, and that's troubling lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Nadia Romero has the story from Washington.
Optimism and uncertainty surrounding the latest round of reopening across the country. With all 50 states now at least partially open, experts warn the virus still poses a significant threat, sparking concern about possible outbreaks later this summer. On Capitol Hill Thursday, lawmakers holding a hearing on the devastating effects of COVID-19 on seniors.
The enormity of this pandemic, coupled with the inherent vulnerability of the nursing home setting, left even the highest quality nursing homes largely unprepared.
Meanwhile, state officials peeling back restrictions with the hopes of jump-starting the economy, which lost another 2.4 million jobs this week. In Mississippi, casinos set to reopen. And in Tennessee, the famed Graceland, welcoming back visitors. Thursday, President Trump visiting a Ford Motor plant in Michigan that has been producing protective equipment for healthcare workers.
We're going to be very strong, starting with our transition period, which will be probably June, July. I think you're going to see some very good numbers coming out.
With the death toll in the United States approaching 100,000 and models predicting the potential for tens of thousands of more deaths, each decision could have ripple effects for weeks or even months.
We're definitely going to see an increase in cases and a spike over the summer and into the fall if we if we come out of social distancing too quickly.
In Washington, Nadia Romero, Currents News.
With all of the states at least partially reopened, the big question now is how to get the American economy running at full steam once again and how to do it safely. Here to talk more about that is Elizabeth McDonald, host of Fox Business Network's The Evening Edit, seen weeknights at 6 p.m. And Elizabeth, the Federal Reserve is sounding the alarm over permanent damage to the U.S. economy because of coronavirus-related lockdowns. If they're right, how do we fix that?
Well, I would question whether it's permanent because nothing is in an economy. The CBO is seeing a 38% to the downside contraction. To get out of it, we follow what parts of Asia did. They've been living in the backyard of China with SARS and MERS outbreaks for decades. And we're now seeing common sense measures taken in various states to reopen. And that is, of course, social distancing. We're seeing kiosks in shopping malls that'll take your temperature. We're seeing companies like Walmart, taking the temperature of workers coming in. So it's how do you mitigate risk by reopening? There will always be risk, but how do you mitigate it? We've lived through this country, of course, the 1918 pandemic. We've lived through the H1N1, the flu in 57 and 68, 69. There was never a wholesale national shutdown. There was a mitigation of risk by stopping large gatherings, wearing face masks, and doing social distancing. We've been here before. This country could probably do it again.
All right, you've used the term great suppression to describe what we're living through. What do you mean by that?
So that means that the various governors across the country have moved forward to suppress their economies to stop the outbreak. It's basically, everything is man-made, but this is more a chosen voluntary suppression of the economy. Whereas a depression or recession is triggered by a number of things, an oil price shock, or, interest rates spiking higher, a credit debt market problem. So, now that we have this Great Suppression, there's a way to stop the Great Depression and unlock the economy.
Yeah, it's been really terrible. More than 38 million American jobs have disappeared in a matter of weeks. Will they come back or are they gone forever?
They'll come back in a different way. This economy is changing rapidly. And so what we're seeing is destruction, of course, with small businesses and restaurants and bars, retail. We know that already. But that it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like all of a sudden it vaporizes and never comes back. Yeah, there's cash problems with a lot of American households because they don't have the income to buy things. So once the economy gets back online, consumers will start spending again. So there is room for optimism here.
Wow. All right, last question. Has this crisis pointed out a glaring weakness in the U.S., the lack of an American manufacturing base?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been crumbling since the 80s. So we've shifted from a manufacturing base starting in the 80s toward more of a services economy. And now we're seeing the president talking about bringing back drug supply chains, other manufacturing, PPE for things like ventilators back into the U.S. So that is the debate right now. Is that the way to go? The Americans like it because it creates jobs. We're seeing supply chains moving rapidly right now out of China. I'm just tracking it right now with Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, what they're seeing, what China is losing. So worldwide, the global economy is shifting. What was good today was to see the slowdown in jobless claims. It came in around 2 million. Yeah, it's 38 million. That's agony. That's painful. The American people are suffering, and it's time for to have another approach, common sense approach to reopening the economy.
All right, Elizabeth McDonald, host of Fox Business Network's The Evening Edit, seen weeknights at 6 p.m. Thanks for being here today.
Anytime.
And if the threat of the coronavirus isn't enough, residents in Michigan are dealing with a flood of trouble. The rising water in Midland is starting to recede, but the full scope of the damage won't be fully evident for days to come. Heavy rains caused 2 dams to break, sending the roaring waters into the town that's about 140 miles north of Detroit. One resident says he can't believe what he witnessed.
When we got down to the Tittabawassee Bridge down there was actually a small house floating in the river. A blue house that was going downriver, and it was just tragic the amount of people that are affected by this.
Roughly 11,000 people have safely evacuated to several shelters. No deaths have been reported. Governor Gretchen Whitmer says she's working on getting federal aid for the area. Still to come on Currents News, parents pulling double duty in quarantine, how to overcome the challenges of working from home and caring for young kids. Also ahead, he's about to take the bar exam, but isn't old enough to enter a bar. Why this teen says God is the reason. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. If being a working parent was hard before, quarantine has made it twice as stressful. They're dealing with the complexities of working from home and watching the kids as daycares and schools are closed indefinitely. Whitney Wild talks with one expert on how parents of young children can face this challenge.
If a picture speaks 1,000 words for parents in quarantine, some of them are probably expletives.
My worst moments look like I am at the end of my rope. I don't know what he wants, and I can feel the pressure of my work.
Rebecca Britt runs her own company, produces a podcast, writes a blog, all while working on a graduate degree and caring for her 14-month-old son.
Guess I will be taking my calls from my car.
She admits when work and childcare collided at home, her stress spiked.
There are times that I totally feel too stressed, and I continuously have in the back of my mind, like, okay, this can't last forever.
Dr. Robin Gurwitch says parents of young kids face unique challenges.
Young children right now are going to be more demanding, are going to have a harder time separating from their parents, may have more temper tantrums and meltdowns because they're distressed.
Gurwitch says routines, quiet time, and breaks can help parents and children find calm during a chaotic time.
If you set up a regular time for some very focused play, you'll be surprised that children will give you a little bit more time because they know that time with them is coming.
To help manage daily challenges, Britt focuses on a message she hopes will stick after the pandemic ends.
My value isn't what I can produce and how many people I can talk to in a day. You realize the world doesn't fall apart when you don't show up sometimes.
In Washington, Whitney Wild, Currents News.
And finally tonight, a young man from Alabama has accomplished a lot in his short life, and he's thanking God for making it happen. Seth Harding has a high school diploma, bachelor's, and a law school degree, all by the age of 19. He was homeschooled with his big family of 12 and hopes to take the Alabama bar exam next year. He credits God for his great success.
Make the purpose of your life fulfilling His purpose in your life, and you will live a fantastic one.
If Seth passes the bar exam, he would be the youngest lawyer in Alabama history. And in case you were wondering, Seth's genius seems to be in his genes. 8 of his other brothers and sisters have also started college by the age of 12. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Before we go, a programming note. If you missed it earlier today, right after this newscast coming up at 7:30 p.m., Net TV will broadcast Cardinal Timothy Dolan's news conference with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio about reopening churches. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. And stay tuned for the news conference next at 7:30. Be well and God bless.